1,000 years ago, Baghdad was a city of grandeur, of riches, and luxury. It was the capital of the largest empire in the world, the Abbasid Empire, where Harun al-Rashid ruled in all his splendor. From every corner of the earth, trade caravans brought silks and jewels and perfumes to adorn and beautify its inhabitants. Apart from all these worldly riches, Baghdad was also famous as a great center of learning. Scholars of all kinds, mathematicians, astronomers, and philosophers came to live there. Amongst these, there came a man called Junaid, who was not only a renowned teacher and a leader of men, but a godly man with a very high moral character. Junaid was born in the Persian town of Nehavand. His father was a glass merchant, but he'd been brought up in the noblest of traditions by his uncle Sari al-Saqati. When Junaid was only 11 years old, he was taken by Sari on pilgrimage. There, in the Masjid al-Haram, they met with 400 scholars who were all discussing the definition of thankfulness. Junaid and his uncle sat and listened intently. Each scholar felt that his answer was the perfect one, much truer than that of the person who had just spoken. Old Sari knew that his nephew was very wise for someone so young. He was curious to hear what his nephew would say on the subject. He cleared his throat to gain attention. Admittedly, brothers, your arguments are all worthy of consideration and praise, but I wonder if you would be so good as to listen a moment to my nephew here, who, in spite of his tender age, often surprises me by his remarks. What do you say, Junaid? What is true thankfulness? The other scholars, surprised and a bit amused by the doting uncle, turned towards the serious-faced youth and encouraged him to speak. Junaid was not intimidated. He raised his high, clear voice and said, "Thankfulness means that we should not misuse a favor which God has bestowed upon us, nor should we use that favor as a source of disobedience." All the scholars were surprised at such a profound answer. Old Sari himself smiled and said, "Why, it seems, Junaid, that your special gift from God will be your tongue." Later, when Junaid was a grown man living in Baghdad, he acquired many disciples and pupils who came to learn from him because of his piety, his understanding, and his sincerity. Some came only to hear his lectures, but others, who were really devoted to him, lived with him all the time. Junaid showed affection and love to everyone and taught them all on equal terms, but there was one disciple whom he seemed to prefer above all others. No one could quite understand why, and as a result they all became quite jealous. Finally, they decided to ask Junaid point blank why he preferred this particular disciple. "He's just like all the rest of us, as far as we can see," they complained. "There isn't anything special about him, so why do you treat him as if there were?" Junaid tried to explain. "He's wiser and more disciplined than you are. He is well-mannered, devoted to Allah, and his understanding is quite profound. One day you will find this out for yourselves." No one was very satisfied with this reply. They really couldn't see what Junaid was talking about, but since they respected their teacher, they just kept silent about it. Junaid, meanwhile, realized they had not understood, and decided to show them the truth. The very next day he called them over and told them all to go to the bird market and bring back 20 birds. When they had brought back the birds, he gave them the following instructions. I want you each to go to a place where no one can see you. Take a knife, kill a bird, then bring it back to me. Only be absolutely sure that no one sees you do it. Each disciple took a bird and left, and before long was back again. One by one they showed Junaid their dead birds, but from the back of the room came a sound of chirping and the fluttering of wings. There stood the favorite disciple holding a very live bird. He was looking a little concerned and surprised, which made everyone laugh all the louder at him. The wise disciple indeed. "What's the matter, brother?" chided one of them. "Don't you know how to obey your teacher's instructions? What a fool!" guffawed another. Junaid called him forward in a stern voice. "Well," he asked, "why didn't you kill the bird as I instructed?" "You said to kill the bird in a place where no one could see," apologized the disciple. "But since Allah sees everything that I do, that was impossible. How can I hide anything from him? That's why I couldn't kill the bird." Junaid nodded his head and turned to the others. "There, you see? You see how wise he is? Compare his measure of understanding with yours, and you'll see why I prefer him." The disciples shuffled their feet and hung their heads. In humble voices they apologized to their master and inwardly asked Allah for forgiveness.